you and I were just talking casually, and I asked you if you were interested in running, and you said, I don't know, I have this really great job in Austin as lieutenant governor. It's an influential position. I don't know why I'd leave. But obviously you've made a different decision now. Why leave this job as one of the most important and powerful government figures in the state of Texas?
I think that's a very, very good question. And I ask myself that occasionally. But the answer is, in June of this past year, my wife Tricia turned to me one day and said, David, you're either going to have to run for the United States Senate or stop turning on TV in the evening. You get mad every time you see what's going on in Washington. If we continue doing things the way we've been doing them, we could very likely go the way of Greece or Italy. But at the same time, if we just make changes, there's $2 trillion sitting on the sideline. There's so much pent-up demand. We could have the most dramatic economic growth in the history of the country. And that's why I got into the race. I have done the things everyone else is talking about.
If that's what you want to make happen or help make happen, what is your top priority when you get to Washington?
Well, see, I want to help create opportunity. And the way you create opportunity, at least the way we've done that in Texas, is that you've got to create a stable business climate. I'm going to be filing bills on repealing Obamacare, on stopping these job-killing regulations coming in, looking at defunding the EPA unless we've got a good conservative president in the White House. So I'm going to be taking a lead on a lot of different subjects. At least I'm going to be taking the initiative, my initiative.
What we need to have are people who understand the economy, where it's not an academic exercise, it's not a speech, but they've actually created jobs, they understand how to cut spending. And they're not a professional politician. They're not wedded to Washington. They're not wedded to kind of playing the governmental game. That's what I think I provide and offer. I've run businesses in 5 different industries over 25 years. I have a broad business background. I've got credibility in the public side. But what I really bring is that background, that business background.
You're not the only business guy in the race. There's another individual who built a very successful business, David Dewhurst. He also has some experience seeing how that intersects with state government. Why are your business credentials more salient than his?
I think the contrast is very clear. Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, and I think well of him, but he's been in elected office for nearly 15 years. By his own definition, he's a professional career politician. What we've laid out is a very comprehensive, detailed, probably the most comprehensive, detailed plan that any senatorial candidate's put out. What we've also laid out is not just say repeal Obamacare, but what do we do to reduce the costs in the entire healthcare system and do it in a way that allows the private sector to be the key element, not a government system, but the private sector.
You tell people you are a fighter. And it seems to me like right now in Washington, we have a lot of fighters. They're fighting with each other and they're not getting things done. So if you go to Washington and you're a fighter, how will you still get something accomplished?
There were an awful lot of Republicans who were complicit in the incredible expansion of government. And we got to turn that around. And what that's going to take is new leadership. I think that's what we saw in 2010 is across the country, Americans want fighters who believe in freedom, believe in limited government, and believe in the Constitution. There are right now 5 or 6 strong, principled constitutional conservatives. If we can double their numbers, if we can take it to 10 or 12, it will transform the Senate, because that's a critical mass. That's enough to push a serious agenda to reform Obamacare, to dramatically shrink the size and power of the federal government, to open up our energy resources to exploration, to pass fundamental tax reform. What it takes is leadership, and I think the Senate is very, very close to a tipping point.
What is your top policy priority?
My top agenda is to pass the 12-point jobs and growth plan, the first half of which is stopping the Obama war on jobs, the second half of which is unleashing the private sector. The first bill I intend to introduce in the U.S. Senate is a bill to repeal every syllable of every word of Obamacare.
You've never run for political office before, and in your campaigning you talk a lot about being from Real Street, but I'm wondering what policy expertise you have that you would take to the Senate if you're elected.
Well, if I had political experience, I would not be equipped to do the job that we need in our country right now. I think if you have government background or political experience, you're ill-equipped to handle the tasks that we have in front of us in this country. And so when I talk about Real Street, the issues that I've been through in my life's experiences over the last 30 years of being a husband, a dad, being a rancher, a real estate developer, a production company executive, started businesses, I've provided jobs, all of those things have given me a perspective that I think our representatives are missing. And that front line, real passion for what's going on in our country today is why I'm running. I get it. I'm from Real Street.
What about your priorities? What would you do on day one?
Well, you know, my priorities would be to be offensive. You know, some people say, well, that's the old football terminology. I understand that. And being offensive is you go in there and you look at the whole thing and you first and foremost have to protect our freedom. You have to get those around you to adhere to the Constitution, because that's not happening right now. Obamacare is a glaring example of an encroachment into our freedoms, telling us that we have to do something, a mandate to buy an insurance policy. You know, one of the things I would do if I were in the Senate today is I would go in with a constitutional amendment that says that all citizens have the freedom and the liberty to pick and choose if they want to have health care.